In the shadowed days before the flood, when heaven's sons mingled with earth's daughters, giants rose upon the land. Towering figures of immense strength and renown, their footsteps shook the soil, their names echoed like thunder. They were the Nephilim, beings of legend, feared by men, watched by angels, and judged by God. The book of Genesis paints a haunting picture of the world before the great deluge. Humanity was multiplying, cities were forming, and culture was beginning to take shape. Yet alongside this growth came corruption, violence, and a mysterious union that would birth beings unlike any others. Genesis 6 verses 1-4 records. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. This passage is brief, enigmatic, and explosive. It introduces the Nephilim, legendary giants whose existence is tied to a union between sons of God and daughters of men. But who were these sons of God? And what does this union mean? Across centuries, scholars, theologians, and storytellers have wrestled with three primary interpretations: angelic beings mingling with humanity, royal dynasties claiming divine status, and mythic echoes of fallen powers. Interpretation 1: Angelic beings mingling with humanity. The oldest and most dramatic interpretation is that the sons of God were angelic beings, divine watchers who crossed the boundary between heaven and earth. This view finds support in ancient Jewish texts like 1 Enoch, which expands the Genesis account into a cosmic drama. In this telling, heavenly beings descended, captivated by human beauty, and took wives among mortals. Their offspring were the Nephilim. Giants, warriors, and beings of immense strength. This interpretation emphasizes the transgression of boundaries. Angels were meant to serve God, not indulge in earthly passions. By mingling with humanity, they corrupted creation, producing offspring that embodied rebellion. The Nephilim thus became symbols of chaos, a distortion of God's design. Their existence contributed to the wickedness that provoked the flood, a divine reset of creation. Cinematically, this view is staggering. Imagine radiant beings descending in fire, their union producing colossal figures whose shadows darkened the land. Humanity gazed in awe and terror, whispering legends of giants whose names echoed like thunder. Yet behind the grandeur lay corruption, a violation of divine order that demanded judgment. Interpretation 2: Royal dynasties claiming divine status. Another interpretation sees the sons of God not as angels, but as human rulers, kings and dynasties who claimed divine authority. In the ancient Near East, rulers often styled themselves as sons of gods, asserting their right to dominate. Genesis may 6 be critiquing this arrogance, powerful men taking wives indiscriminately, building dynasties, and producing offspring who became men of renown. In this view, the Nephilim are not supernatural hybrids but legendary warriors and rulers, remembered for their strength and fame. Their renown was worldly, built on conquest and oppression. The corruption lay in human pride, rulers elevating themselves to divine status, blurring the line between God and man. This interpretation resonates with the broader biblical theme of human arrogance. Just as Babel sought to reach heaven, these rulers sought to claim divine identity. The Nephilim thus symbolize the danger of unchecked power, dynasties that exalt themselves above God, and the violence that flows from pride. Visually, this interpretation evokes towering palaces, kings crowned in gold, armies marching under banners of false divinity. The Nephilim are remembered as mighty figures, but their legacy is one of corruption, arrogance, and downfall. Interpretation 3: Mythic echoes of fallen powers. A third interpretation blends myth and theology, seeing the Nephilim as echoes of ancient stories of fallen powers. In many cultures, myths tell of gods or demigods who mingled with mortals, producing heroes and giants. Genesis may 6 be engaging with these myths, reframing them within a biblical worldview. The Nephilim are not divine heroes but corrupted beings, reminders of rebellion and judgment. This interpretation highlights the mythic resonance of the passage. The Nephilim embody humanity's fascination with greatness, strength, and fame. They are heroes of old, remembered in legend, but their story is one of distortion. By placing them in the narrative of Genesis, Scripture reclaims the mythic imagination, showing that even the greatest legends fall under God's authority. Cinematically, this view conjures images of colossal statues, myths carved into stone, echoes of giants whose names linger in ruins. The Nephilim are remembered as titans, but their legacy is a cautionary tale: greatness without righteousness leads to destruction. Each interpretation carries profound theological weight. Whether angelic transgression, royal arrogance, or mythic distortion, the Nephilim represent the blurring of boundaries between heaven and earth, divine and human, order and chaos. Their existence highlights the corruption of creation, the danger of pride, and the inevitability of judgment. The flood becomes the divine response to this corruption. Humanity had descended into violence, boundaries had been broken, and giants of renown had risen. Yet God's holiness demanded a reset. The Nephilim thus stand as a prelude to judgment, a symbol of the world's fall before the waters cleansed it. From the union of heaven's sons and earth's daughters, colossal figures emerged. Their silhouettes towered against storm-lit skies, their footsteps shook the soil, and their names echoed like thunder across the valleys. The Nephilim did not creep quietly into history. They rose suddenly, dramatically, and their presence was impossible to ignore. Villages whispered of them, rulers feared them, and humanity stood in awe of beings whose size and strength seemed beyond mortal measure. The Nephilim were warriors, conquerors, and rulers. Their weapons glowed like molten suns, forged from the bones of the earth. Their voices thundered like storms, commanding armies and silencing dissent. To ordinary humans, they appeared invincible, titans whose strength dwarfed all resistance. Legends grew around them, tales of battles won, cities conquered, and feats unmatched. They became the heroes of old, men of renown. Yet their renown was not righteousness but notoriety. Their fame was built on fear, their greatness on violence, their legacy on corruption. Around firesides, people told stories of the giants. Songs were sung of their victories, murals carved into stone to immortalize their deeds. They became archetypes of greatness, prototypes of mythic heroes. Their rise was not just physical but cultural, shaping the imagination of generations. Even after the flood, echoes of their presence lingered. Israel's spies trembled before giants in Canaan, saying, "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes." The shadow of the Nephilim haunted history, their rise remembered in fear and legend. But their rise was not innocent. The Nephilim embodied corruption. Their existence blurred boundaries between heaven and earth, divine and human, order and chaos. They symbolized rebellion, pride, and distortion. Humanity celebrated them, but God saw the violence they embodied. Their rise contributed to the wickedness that provoked the flood. Giants may have been exalted by men, but in God's eyes, they were a distortion of creation, a corruption that demanded judgment. The Nephilim established the archetype of giants as overwhelming opposition. They became symbols of enemies too great for human strength, obstacles too vast to overcome. Later giants, Anakim, Rephaim, Goliath, were echoes of this primeval terror. Their rise taught Israel that victory over giants comes not through human might but divine power. The Nephilim's renown became a cautionary tale: greatness without righteousness leads to destruction. The rise of the Nephilim was epic, terrifying, and unforgettable. They were giants of strength, warriors of renown, legends of old. Their presence dominated the pre-flood world, shaping culture, memory, and fear. Yet their rise was also corruption, a distortion of creation that provoked divine judgment. They are remembered not just as titans but as warnings. Their rise teaches us that greatness without righteousness is destruction, that power without holiness is corruption, and that even giants fall before the sovereignty of God. Giants may rise, but only God reigns forever. Genesis 6 verse 5 declares, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time." The Nephilim's rise magnified humanity's fall. Their strength became tyranny, their fame became arrogance, and their presence filled the world with chaos. The Nephilim were not saviors but conquerors. Their weapons blazed, their voices thundered, and their reign was marked by bloodshed. Ordinary people lived in terror, villages trembled under their footsteps, and dynasties exalted themselves as divine. Violence spread like wildfire, consuming the earth. The heroes of old were remembered not for compassion but conquest. Their renown was built on fear, their legacy on oppression. God's response was not indifference but sorrow. Genesis 6 verse 6 records, "The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled." The corruption was total. Boundaries were broken, violence was rampant, and giants of renown dominated the land. The flood became the divine reset, a cleansing of creation, a judgment on chaos, a restoration of order. The Nephilim's rise was part of the reason for this judgment. Their existence symbolized the depth of humanity's fall, the chaos that demanded divine intervention. The Nephilim embodied rebellion against divine order. They blurred the line between heaven and earth, divine and human, order and chaos. Their existence was a living symbol of corruption, pride, and distortion. Humanity celebrated them, but God saw the violence they embodied. Their renown was not righteousness but notoriety. Their greatness was not godly but corrupted. Their rise was the world's fall, their fame the world's chaos. The world in chaos was the inevitable result of the Nephilim's rise. Giants of renown dominated the land, violence spread, corruption deepened, and boundaries were broken. Humanity celebrated them, but God grieved. The flood became the divine response, a cleansing of creation, a judgment on chaos, a restoration of order. The Nephilim are remembered not just as giants but as warnings. Their rise teaches us that greatness without righteousness is destruction, that power without holiness is corruption, that renown without faith is chaos. Giants may rise, but chaos falls. Renown may echo, but judgment speaks louder.